Okay, I'm going to talk you through the immune response for GCSE Biology. So, all microorganisms, in fact all cells, have structures on their surface, on their cell surface membrane, which they use to signal to each other, things like that. Okay, and all different organisms have different shaped structures on their cell surface. So I've drawn them really big there. Okay, so these structures sticking out from the surface are called antigens. And these are used by your immune system to distinguish between things that are your own, which are called self, or foreign, which are called non-self. So your own body cells have antigens on them that your immune system recognizes as your own, and it does nothing about them. Any cell that enters the body that's not the same as yours will be recognized as non-self or foreign, and you'll mount an immune response too. So let's imagine that this microbe here enters your body, okay, and it starts to reproduce. Okay, and it's going to replicate. Let's say it's a bacterium, it could be a virus invading your cells, it doesn't really matter. Okay, so we're going to get lots of them, and they're all going to have exactly the same antigen on them. Now, you have got white blood cells in your body that are specific to different antigens. So I'm going to draw a few white blood cells in. Okay, there's the nucleus. Okay, and on their cell surface, they have got different receptors that can recognize the different antigens of different microorganisms. So yeah, we've got a number of different white bloods. Draw another one in just to show you. Okay, it's got another different shaped receptor in it. Okay, so these are your white blood cells. These white blood cells that are specific are called lymphocytes. Okay, and they mature inside your lymph glands, hence why they're called lymphocytes. And these are specific. Okay, and they recognize specific antigens, so they have antigen receptors. Okay, so you can see we've got a number here. You've got thousands, millions of different ones. And when you first see a microorganism, you don't have very many of each type of specific lymphocyte. Okay, so there's plenty of time for your microorganism to keep on reproducing and causing damage to your cells, either by bursting out of them as a virus or producing toxins. Okay, and that will make you ill. All right. What will happen next, though, is that your lymphocytes will start to kick in and start to recognize them. So if I just change this, get rid of all of these, what will happen is only this white blood cell, this lymphocyte here, is able to recognize this antigen. Okay, so what will happen is it will move about, and it'll be moving about inside the cell, inside your body rather. Okay, and it will bind to that antigen. Okay, so if it sees that antigen, it will bind to it and be stimulated by the specific antigen. And what that means is it will be activated and start to reproduce. So we're going to have our microbe back in again. Here we go. Here's just draw a few of them just to get started. Our white blood cell will start to reproduce, and we get more of them. So they're activated, and they're all specific for the same antigen, i.e. the one that was stimulated the first one. And once they've reproduced and they made more of them, they'll also start to secrete special proteins called antibodies. Okay, and antibodies basically have the same shape on them, as the antigen receptor on the white blood cell itself. So the antibodies are being secreted from the white blood cells. And the key thing that happens is that the antibodies start to bind to the antigens on the microbes. All right? And what that means is that the microbes are sort of incapacitated, and actually also what starts to happen is they start getting clumped together because the antibodies can actually bind to two antigens at the same time. There's actually they're sort of a bit of a double structure, so we'll sort of draw them dodgily joining up. So they'll clump them together, and that means they can't infect any more cells if they're a virus, or they can't produce any more toxins. So they're sort of inactivated. And then what happens is, just wipe these out a bit, such quality. Big white blood cells called macrophages, big phagocytic white blood cells come along, and they will engulf and destroy the pathogens. Okay, in the same way as the non-specific ones did, we talked about in previous lessons. Okay, so they will engulf and destroy the pathogen. So this is a macrophage, or we could just call it a phagocyte, and it will engulf the pathogen. All right, by phagocytosis. The key thing here is that this is a more efficient process than the non-specific one. So actually by having the antibodies on their surface, it helps and it signals the macrophage and helps them to engulf the pathogen. All right. So what's going to happen after you've destroyed the microorganism? Well, the key thing is we've now got quite a large number of our specific white blood cells. I'll draw them back in again. We've got quite a few of these. Okay, now many of them will die off. Okay, but what happens to some of them is they become memory cells. Okay, or memory lymphocytes. Okay, key thing is these cells know which antibody to make. You don't keep the antibody inside them. Okay, they are not the antibody, but they know how to make that specific antibody for that same pathogen. All right, so the next time you see the same microbe come in, here he is again, or it, because it's not really got a gender, because it's a bacterium or a virus. The next time it comes in, these, because we've got more of them now than we had before, these will replicate very rapidly. Lots of them. Whee! Okay, and they will produce large numbers of that specific antibody really quickly. And that's the key thing, large numbers really quickly. And they will destroy the pathogen before it has time to make you ill. Yeah, because they'll bind to the antigens on the pathogen and the macrophage will eat them up. And they won't have time to replicate and or reproduce and make you ill. And that is why you become immune to most pathogens once you've seen them once. All right. You might want to think about why you can get things like a cold or influenza more than once. All right. You also might want to think about how this relates to vaccine. So what do you think is in a vaccine and what makes you immune without getting ill? Okay, so all right, this is called acquired immunity. Hope that makes sense. Thank you. I'll just give you a quick summary of the immune response just for GCSE. So the antigen on the microbe or pathogen is recognised by specific lymphocytes. Okay, these produce specific antibodies after they've been stimulated. So they're stimulated here. Okay. The antibodies result in the destruction or death of the pathogen because they bind to it. Yeah, so it's killed. Okay, probably by and mainly by being eaten by those phagocytic cells. So that's, but the key thing is they're killed. Okay, and then at the end we have some lymphocytes are stored as memory cells. Okay, so what that means is if you see the same pathogen again, oh look, let's just delete that. So if same pathogen is seen again, lymphocytes are activated, lymphocytes reproduce quickly and produce antibodies more quickly, and that's the key thing, more quickly and in greater numbers. And the consequence is the pathogen or the microbe is killed or destroyed before you can become ill. The reason I've got killed or destroyed here is because bacteria are killed, but viruses aren't alive, so they are destroyed. So depending on this context of your question, it might affect which word you want to use there. So when you're talking about why you don't get ill the second time, or indeed how vaccines work, you would be using this idea along with the idea of the memory cells. Okay, because all the vaccine is something that stimulates your lymphocytes to produce antibodies and memory cells in the first place. Hope that makes sense. Thanks.